Hello everyone, we are team number 4 and we're going to talk about native and non-native English teachers. English as an international language. First of all, we have to know that the way English is perceived all over the world has recently undergone a great deal of change. Language researchers and educators are embracing the fact that English is spoken by more people as a second language than as a mother tongue. As a consequence, English is no longer exclusively owned by the native-speaking communities, but also by newly arrived members of the English-speaking community. Another indication of the increasing interest in the global expansion of English is the frequent use of the term World English in the literature, together with English as an international language and English as a lingua franca. Within this context, EIL is becoming established as the appropriate term to refer to the most of the current uses of English worldwide, especially in those situations involving non-native speakers interacting in English, both with native speakers and non-native speakers.
We're going to continue with the effects of English as an international language on language teaching. So, the transformation of English from being the language of powerful countries like the UK or the USA to becoming the international language it is today has brought with it many changes in the language teaching profession, which is trying to adapt to the new English as an international language environment and the new demands of its learners. So we have a few proposals to show you, but the aim of the proposals is incorporating new formulations of English as an international language into language teaching. Especially emphasize the need to draw on the previous knowledge of the language learner through exploiting their knowledge of their own language and culture. So we have here 3 proposals, and this is not everything that was mentioned, but we did agree that was the most important to present. So we have McKay, and he proposes devoting time and attention in class to the learner's own culture as a means of empowering them and giving them the opportunity to share their own culture with other speakers of English. And on the other hand, we have Dendrinos. She claims that English lessons in English as a foreign language context must endow students with the capacity to move freely from their L1 to the L2 and vice versa. So she claims that learners of English as an international language will not be monolingual users of the newly acquired language, as they will have to act as interpreters or simply just report in one language on information they will have processed in other language. And then finally we have Katru, and he says that what is needed is a shift of 2 types: a paradigm shift in research and teaching, and an understanding of the social linguistic reality of the uses and users of English.
The role of non-native speaker teachers in EIL teaching. With the increasing establishment of English as the world lingua franca, non-native speakers will be in optimal positions to lead their students into the realm of EIL. Non-native speaker teachers are endowed with the privilege of bilingualism, as their experience of switching back and forth from their own language to the target one enhances their understanding of the demands of the learning situation. Non-native speaker teachers have been reported to have several advantages over native speakers, especially over those who are monolingual speakers of English. This is because non-native speakers have lived through the process of becoming bilingual and expressing themselves in different languages. Teachers are responsible for presenting the multifaceted reality in which the new language is used and for helping the learner express their own identity through this newly acquired voice. In this context, the way the code switching is handled in the classroom will be of paramount importance as it will greatly contribute to the learners becoming multi-competent speakers.
We are going to talk about the native and non-native dimension, and it is proposed by Medjes, and there's 3 of them. So, what are the characteristics of non-NEST, which are non-native English-speaking teachers? First, they are unsafe of using the language they have to teach. They adopt 2 kinds of attitudes, which are aggressive and pessimistic. And by being both teacher and learner at the same time, non-nests are driven into a constant state of schizophrenia. And one of the options is total resignation, and another is restricting the language to those rules which he or he has learned or mislearned. Then, aggressive and pessimistic non-nests, as I mentioned before. The aggressive ones have a linguistic insecurity that provokes a prescriptive and intolerant attitude. And they operate on mistaken beliefs and prejudices about how language works. The only way out for aggressive teachers is to play it safe. They use the words that are known to them. Many times, these words have hidden connotations or are out-of-date slang. And on the other hand, the pessimistic type are obsessed with grammar and pays little attention to the pronunciation and vocabulary, and almost none to linguistic appropriateness. Also, they seem to have in mind wisdom belief that no one can learn a language without learning its grammar. Then we have some deficiencies in the cultural context, and it is very complicated for a non-nest to teach a topic that he or she may be ignorant about. And Medjes defines this phenomenon, the relation between the linguistic forms and objects or events in the outside world, as a referential appropriateness. Then Medjes believes that non-nests will always be unable to acquire a native command of English, and can be better understood with Selinker's interlanguage continuum, which I will show you next. And Medjes points out that in 1972, Selinker designed a way to explain the development of L2 students. So here we have it. It comes from a 0%, which is zero competence, to native percent, that is a 100%. So Selinker stated that L2 learners are somewhere along the continuum, and that the learning process consists of going from one stream to the other. Medjes argues that this schema has to be represented in a more realistic way, which is the next one. You can see there it could be from zero competence to near native, which is a 90 to 95%, and the native, which is 100%.
We're going to talk about the native and the near native speakers as well. As Midget says, there is no doubt that non-native speakers can acquire native-like proficiency in English as an additional language, whether they belong to the outer circle, which is the English as a second language, or the expanding circle, which is the English as a foreign language. There are some differences in both groups. The intuition both groups show is different since adult learners cannot go through the same stages that children do when acquiring the L1. So the native go through those stages when children, and the near native go through those stages when adult learners. Also, there are some similarities. Computers observe that native and near native speakers have the same proficiency and are equal in their level of language use. Although native speakers vary among themselves as well, near native speakers lie outside the boundaries of native speakers' variation. After all, a speaker of a given language is a speaker who is accepted by the speech community as such, not someone who is endowed with a specific underlying linguistic system. About the classroom control, Midgets formulates two questions. Is it true that by virtue of having a better command of English, the native English-speaking teachers perform better in the classroom? Or is it true that the more deficient the teacher is in English, the less efficient he or she is bound to be? We are gonna discuss about this and in the next questions. Um, about the natives and the non-natives. Midgets admits that language competence is the point where the non-native English-speaking teachers are inevitably handicapped. Midgets points out that the native English-speaking teachers are only potentially superior in that in some cases, the non-natives do better in certain areas of language use. Some of the examples in which the natives are superior is that the most frequent areas are fluency and vocabulary, followed by speaking, pronunciation, and listening comprehension. And some of the difficulties that the non-native face are at the bottom of the list, where the grammar, the idiomatic expressions, propensity, intonation, and prepositions. So the non-natives are good at this. These are some of the definitions that we'll be covering for you guys just to see it and read it. Next one, please. This is about the second dimension, the non-native and the non-native. Midgets compares the non-native among themselves. He agrees that if all the other variables are equal, the non-native with higher proficiency in English will be better teacher. Therefore, he points out that the most important professional duty for the non-native is to improve their command of English as much as possible. There are two major problems that make this goal difficult to achieve. One of them is the facilitation. In the opinions of Midget, the best way to avoid facilitation is to acquire a high proficiency in English to live in the target language country for a long time. Revis and Midgets found that 10% of the respondents said that he had stayed in English-speaking countries for more than 1 year, whereas the 86% had never been in an English-speaking country. The rest stayed for a period of between 1 year and less than a month. They also found that the non-native considered that having high qualifications improves one's chances of spending time in an English-speaking country. This probably enables making friends and therefore having a chance to keep in touch with native speakers. This influences the motivation to work together with the natives. And the most important factor is that, according to Spolsky, he points out that the frequent contact between the non-native and the native speakers helps the former to improve their English, even when the native speakers use foreigner talk. However, Revis and Midgets add that the frequent contact can also have a negative effect. The non-native can become aware of their deficiencies and become more critical, and as a consequence, lose their self-esteem. And about the third dimension, the Midgets believes that the assertion, the more proficient, the more deficient, is absurd for this dimension. Although there were differences in the performance among the native speakers, there are no differences in the L1 competence in both groups.
Then Midgets believes that if a nest is at the same time a learner of a foreign language, the drawbacks can be counterbalanced.